Trying to fix your running form could be the best thing you ever do, but it could also be the worst thing you ever do if you don't know how to do it or you do it for the wrong reasons. So let's unpick it all and help you navigate your way through it, or even decide if it's the right thing for you to do in the first place. So let me tell you how this all started. A few weeks ago, Mary and I went and had a run analysis done because I felt like I was running like this, and Mary thought she was running like this. But really, behind it, what was happening is, for our training for Boston, for our training for New York, we were picking up minor injuries, minor aches and pains, but enough to knock our consistency, and enough was enough. This was not a knee-jerk reaction. This was a long-term process that resulted in having a 3D run analysis. I'm going to talk about the process that we went through in the hope that it helps you make a decision whether a run analysis is the right thing for you, because there are a few big problems with trying to fix your running form. But this video, the aim of it, is to take those problems away and turn them from problems to solutions. And if I do that for you, then do me a deal, subscribe to the channel, help us get to 100k by end of September, which is my birthday, that's the aim. But we're gonna talk about the big problems as I see them with trying to fix your running form while I'm running. We're on our breakfast run this morning, so this seemed like a pretty good point to start the video while we're walking up maybe one of the steepest hills we've ever walked up. Oh my God. Even walking up it in this heat is ridiculous. Let's talk technique. If you're wondering or you're worrying about your technique, but you never actually get injured, if you've been running for a long time without an injury, you're just frustrated because you're, maybe not running as fast as you want, my suggestion would be there might be other things that you should look at before you think about changing your technique. Here's why. This is better, we got some down for this bit. Your technique, you see, is actually a combination of so many complicated factors that result in your brain moving your body forwards. It involves arms, shoulders, hips, legs, knees, whatever, every part of the body. And if you're not picking up an injury, then that's the way that your body has best worked out how to move you forward. So if you do change your running technique when you're not picking up injuries, that could throw that whole process out of line. And actually, ironically, it could be something that causes you to pick up injuries. I mean, it might not. What you have to consider is, if you are at the pointy end of running where seconds matter, yeah, maybe changing your technique or tweaking your technique might help. If you are a normal runner, average runner like me and Mary, where really there's so many other places where you can pick up time, changing your technique when you're not getting injured, yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm waiting for some flat to tell my next point because Koh Phangan is punishing. Okay then, let's say you're in a place where you do want to change your running technique because you're picking up injuries, or you're at the pointier end of racing, or you just want to, because although I'm urging caution with changing your technique if you're not picking up injuries, I'm not saying don't do it. As long as you are helped by absolute professionals that know what they're doing, that's the safe route, and that's what this point is about. You see, there are two ways of doing a run analysis that I wouldn't necessarily recommend as the be-all and end-all, and that's looking at yourself. It's a good start point. Film yourself on a treadmill, film yourself out running, see if you can spot any major faults. But the other one that I think people think is a gait analysis is, when you go into those shops to buy a pair of trainers, those running shops. I actually had to stop so that I could explain this a little bit better, because running up hills trying to explain things, it's not fun. In there, they have a treadmill usually, and you go in there and then you try to find the right trainers for you by going on the treadmill. So these are a very basic style of run analysis, but they're not a run analysis, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you a story on our way back. So if you've watched the channel for a while, you're gonna know this story, but very briefly, back in 2019 when I was training for the London Marathon, I picked up a hip injury and I couldn't work out why, and it was really stopping my training. So I went and got a run analysis done, and what we discovered was, and this is how crazy it is it was my hands, because they were facing backwards when I was running with my left arm, it was changing my whole swing of my body, which was putting pressure on my right hip, which was causing the hip to give out, get injured. And just because we figured out that I need to change my hand from facing backwards
to facing sideways, which fixed me in time for the London Marathon, and I ran a PB at the time of 2:55. But the point, going back to the going on a treadmill in a running shop, is that is just for your feet. That is just going to be able to see how you land. That's not a run analysis, because there's so many different parts to the puzzle. And you know what? I'm not even going to make my third point, because as much as I love biomechanics and technique and all that chat, there's someone that is far more knowledgeable than me on the subject on YouTube, the go-to. So I'm going to hand you over to James Dunn.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, you're right. When it comes to running form, there's often a little more going on than meets the eye at first glance. We talk a lot about the kinetic chain. That is how the muscles, tendons, joints, etc., and the forces passing through them all are interconnected. It's a bit like the iceberg effect, really. What you see on the surface is often the smallest part, and if you try to just analyse that bit, then you're not taking the bigger picture into account. Many of us try to guess what the issue is based on feel. You might have a bit of Achilles pain, and perhaps make the assumption that it's about how your foot lands on the floor, putting strain through the Achilles tendon in a certain way. That would seem to make sense, cause and effect. So you might be tempted to fix the way your foot strikes the floor, perhaps trying to transition from being a pronounced forefoot striker to running with a midfoot strike, and perhaps that might work for you. But in reality, because everything is interconnected, your sore Achilles may equally be caused by an issue far away from where the pain is. It could be that you have very weak glutes or tight calves, both of which could be tracked back to a hip flexor or low back issue. It takes a bit of a change in how we often look at the body, but in my opinion, an analytical and zoomed out approach is the only real way to try to solve most running issues you might be dealing with. Most runners would benefit from having a run analysis done before you engage in the process of trying to change your running technique, just to make sure that the changes that you're looking to make are appropriate and fit with your body's existing strengths and weaknesses. So look at your running technique and your movements as one whole linked process rather than lots of individual pieces, and you'll be one step closer to consistent pain-free running, which is when it starts to get really fun.
And now you've got all this information, where do you go now? Straight into run analysis? Well, let me ask you this question first. How much time do you pour into strengthening and conditioning and working on your mobility and flexibility? Because if it's none or minimal, these kind of things can actually solve the problem before you need to go to gait analysis. You see, you could have a pretty simple but comprehensive strengthening program that could fix the problem before you even need to get to run analysis, because they are pricey. And if you're looking for somewhere to start but you don't know where, lots of single leg movements like these lunges, or hip thrusts, single leg get-ups, side lunges, and that's just naming a few. But if you think about it, if you're not strengthening, you're not helping those weak muscles that might be causing the poor run form anyway. So essentially what I think I'm saying is you're not allowed to talk about having a bad technique if you don't do any strengthening or even mobility to help it. So what you often get from a professional run analysis is a strengthening program or areas to focus on, and then a suggestion of which technique or form faults you would be best off correcting. In our case, our arms were still swinging across the body and our cadence was quite low. So first off, you can't tackle all of these form tweaks in every run. A bit like swimming, if you try and think of every part of your technique when you're in the water, it often leads to the stroke deteriorating because you're overthinking or doing too much. A good way to change your technique is slowly and over time. I like to think of some of my easy runs as kind of technique interval sessions. So for 1 minute out of each 5 while I'm running easy, I focus on my new arm swing. It's actually exhausting from concentrating so hard. So then I drop back into my old form and repeat. And I'll only focus on arm swing. Next week, it might be 2 minutes in every 5 and then so on. And eventually the brain recognises this new movement pattern as normal and you don't have to consciously think about it. And then I'll move on to the next form correction. It does take a fair bit of time, but it is 100% worth the effort in the long run, if you'll pardon the pun. There you go, hopefully this video brought you some value. If it did, consider subscribing, but interact, that's the most important thing. And if you liked it, then you're definitely going to like this one, which was the last one in the series, The Big Problem with a Runner's Body. See you Sunday.